We're going to be talking tonight about how to lead kids through life's tough topics, and there are a lot of topics in the book that I wrote and that recently released. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit tonight about how you, as children's ministry leaders, can help parents to really navigate through the very difficult waters of these tough topics. Our kids are being raised in a world that is really against biblical standards. And certainly the messages that our kids are receiving are very much not only are they antithetical to what the Bible's teaching, but they're often hostile to what the Bible is teaching. And so no matter where you are in North America, around the world, no doubt you know that our kids who are in our ministry now, growing up in the 21st century, they're dealing with so many more difficult decisions and just tough topics than we had to deal with when we were kids. One recent example of that, I remember it was just a few months ago, I guess about 6 months or so ago, last year, here in the United States, when the big news was that the Supreme Court of the United States came down with a ruling that all same-sex couples could now marry in any state, and it would legally have to be recognized. And so biblical marriage and the viewpoint of biblical marriage as we know it was suddenly struck down, and the law of the land was that homosexual marriage was legal. Well, I remember receiving emails and text messages from children's pastors all around the country here in the United States asking me, what are you going to say this weekend to your kids? What are you going to do? How are you going to approach this topic this weekend in kids' church? And my response to them was nothing. And they're all freaking out like, what? You're not going to say anything about this? How are you not going to say anything about this? And I want to explain to you what I explained to them. And this not only applies to biblical sexuality and especially homosexuality as a hot topic, but many other issues as well. And here's what you need to know. Not all topics are for group discussion. So I think you have to be very, very careful what issues that you as a children's ministry leader are addressing in children's church as a group. So many children are at different points in the journey. A lot of you have kindergartners all the way through fifth grade, or you may even have younger than that all in one setting. And they're all at different spots, both mentally and in emotional maturity. And when you address topics, whether it's sexuality or something else, when you address something that's weighty and serious, especially homosexuality and gay marriage, when you do that to a large group of kids, it's very, very difficult to do so in a way that is appropriate for every child. So not every topic is something that you need to react to or feel that in a group setting you've got to address just because it's something that is a topic of discussion among some of the kids. Also, number two, you need to recognize that your job is pastoring these kids, not parenting these kids. Your job is pastor, not parent. Many parents, as they should, they want to be the ones to discuss the difficult topics, especially such as homosexuality and sexuality in general, with their kids. Now, I understand. I get a lot of feedback from that when I say things like that, because they say, well, hey, we got a lot of parents in our ministry who don't ever discuss it with their kids. I understand. That's very unfortunate. I hate that. However, you don't want to undercut parents by addressing it publicly in a large group of kids. You take away the opportunity that a parent not only deserves, but many of them very much want to be able to be the one to speak to their kids about these tough topics. And so Really, I think homosexuality, gay marriage, sexuality in general is something that parents should include in their general talks about biblical sexuality and living a life that reflects what the Bible teaches with their kids. So remember, you're to pastor the kids, teach them the truth from the Word of God, but it's not your job to proactively bring up every controversial issue or topic that might be addressed at school or even in the neighborhood. Thirdly, if you're going to address any difficult topic, but really sometimes it's even just in general as you're teaching, truth from the Bible. Number 3, be prepared for questions. Because even though you're not doing a group topic discussion about something, you may all of a sudden be hit with a question in front of everybody about something. So here's what I tell children's ministry leaders all the time. I tell them, have the conversation in your head before you have it with your mouth. Because there will be a child who's going to ask you a question about a difficult topic, and you don't want to be caught off guard. For example, I was teaching on Christmas, the Christmas story, and just randomly yelled out, you've probably had this happen. A little girl asks, when I talked about the Virgin Mary, what's a virgin? And then, of course, whenever we were teaching on the life of Joseph, actually just this past weekend, we were teaching about Joseph and Potiphar's wife. And one of them said, wait, what is adultery? I've heard of that. What is that? So you need to be anticipating those types of questions, and you need to have your response already in your mind. You've played out that conversation, so when you do speak to it, you're not just stammering all over the place and have a bunch of jumbled I'm nervous type of dialogue with the kids. Instead, you can calmly and you can very confidently respond to those questions. If a child asks you a direct question about whether it's homosexuality, virgin, adultery, whatever, treat it just like you would any other question. Answer it with, I'd be happy to share my thoughts about this subject with you. But I'll tell you what, let's talk to your mom or dad when they come to pick you up, and perhaps together we can answer your questions in a healthy way. So you tell that child that, and you kind of shut down that question and say, we'll talk later when mom and dad comes to pick you up. Well, then when the parent comes, follow the cues of the parent. Explain to them what happened, the conversation you had with that child. And then if the parent does not wish to discuss it right then and there, follow the parent's lead. Remember, they're the ones who are in charge of their kid. It's their responsibility to be the primary spiritual influence in their child's life. So allow the parent to have that conversation on their own terms and in their own timing. All right? Another thing that you can do as a children's pastor or children's ministry leader when it comes to difficult topics like this is number 4, offer a special class. An alternative to discussing difficult topics with a large group in children's church especially is to offer a special class or a discussion in which you can be the MC, you moderate it, but you teach and you allow the parents to sign their kids up to attend. And I would encourage parents to attend with their children so that they're able to be along and be a part of the dialogue, and you can encourage them to continue that conversation after the class. And then when you teach the class, rather than coming at a topic such as gay marriage in a negative manner and just talk about, we as a church, we are against gay marriage and we don't believe in that, instead of coming at a negative tone and we're against something, instead discuss the topic with the overall umbrella of God's plan for our sexuality. Be positive about it and say, God created male and female to complement one another. And marriage is the lifelong commitment between one man and one woman. And the world will try to redefine that in a lot of ways, not just homosexuality, but polygamy and many other things that are probably coming down the pike before too long. And you can talk about it from a positive standpoint rather than what we're against. Let's talk about what the Bible is for, because it's God's plan for our life, and it's his plan so that we can prosper, we can flourish, and we can have the life that he's planned for us. And finally, when you're dealing with difficult topics with kids, number 5, pray for God's wisdom. Pray for God's wisdom. Whether it's the topic of gay marriage, homosexuality, or any other difficult topic for kids, those things are becoming more commonplace, and it's a topic that kids are hearing more and more about, but it's very polarizing, and you're probably never going to give the perfect answer in a group setting like that. We don't ever want to shy away from the truth, but I think as leaders of families, we also have to be wise and careful when dealing with the youngest among us, because on issues like this and many others, we want clarity and not confusion. Okay, so those are thoughts for you, the children's ministry leader, on how you can deal with difficult topics like that. But then I want to share with you just very quickly a couple of things that you can share with parents. As you have these conversations, encourage your parents when they're talking about this. Number 1, encourage them, don't freak out. Tell your parents, don't freak out when your kids ask about difficult topics. Don't overreact and freak out. I see a lot of parents flip out over things like when they're asked about gay marriage or homosexuality in general, or even what is sex. They end up freaking out. They act like they're very uncomfortable with the subject. A lot of times that they're asked about, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual issues, they go on a diatribe against the liberal media and the LGBT conspiracy and all that. Tell them, don't do that. Just calmly share with your kids how, although some people choose to live their lives in contradiction to what God planned and what the Bible teaches, our goal is not to be against them. Our goal is to pray for them, to show them God's love, and to display God's character in everything we do. So tell your parents, don't flip out, because children take their emotional cues from their parent. If the parent's freaking out about it and they act like they're not comfortable with it, well, the kid's going to go, okay, well, this is obviously not a subject I need to ever bring up with mom or dad again. So done, not having this conversation anymore. Certainly, there's a lot of reason to be concerned about the society that our kids are growing up in. But listen, God's still on the throne. We don't need to freak out. There's no need to panic. He is going to lead us and guide us through the situation. Another thing that you can tell parents, number 2, tell them don't only give part of the story. Just like not being against them. Don't just simply say, we believe that homosexuality is a sin, or we believe that gay people shouldn't marry, whatever. Explain to them what sin really is, that it's choosing to live outside of God's plan and purpose for their life, and that sin is a willful choice to disobey God's commands. So encourage parents to go back to the Bible, revisit the story of Adam and Eve and how sin and temptation has been a problem for human beings since the beginning of time. This is not a new issue. Remind them that even though people do make choices that are opposite of what God commanded, Jesus came to die on the cross so that all sin can be forgiven. All we have to do is admit our sin, receive his forgiveness, and then choose to follow Jesus every day. No matter what the difficult topic is, get your parents to bring it around to salvation, forgiveness of sin, and God giving us the strength to resist temptation to go off of his plan. And then number 3, don't focus only on the don't. Tell your parents, don't focus only on the don't. More important than the fact that we don't believe in gay marriage, children need to hear what we do believe. They need to hear that God has a plan for marriage. He created male and female, and he desires that they come together for a lifelong partnership. Listen, God's plan for us is what we need to focus on, not only focusing on what Satan is trying to do to derail God's plan. I want to speak to all of you as children's ministry leaders. and just remind you of something. Children are watching us during this critical time in history. And no matter where you are around the world right now, no doubt your kids are hearing about topics and issues that they have a lot of questions about. Um, hey, the world is watching Christians at this time. And if they see us addressing whether it's this issue or other issues with anger, bitterness, or even, God forbid, hatred in our words or our tone of voice, that's going to send a very confusing message to them. After all, we know and they have heard God is love. He created every man, woman, boy, and girl. He loves them all. And you got to remember that Ephesians 4:14 through 15, and I think I've got it there for you to read along with me. It says, then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever that they sound like the truth. Instead, and this is the key, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. And listen, that is our mandate as the church. We gotta speak the truth in love to our kids, helping them through these difficult topics, to our parents, helping them to lead their kids through these difficult topics, and to the world. And just because the truth of God's word is different from the beliefs of others or the ruling of a court, that doesn't mean we should join with others who choose to, resort to name calling and picketing and belittling and hate. As children of God, we got to be careful that our speech, even our tweets and Facebook posts, we got to make sure they're speaking the truth in love. The church should respond the same way that God instructed the children of Israel in 2 Chronicles 7:14. And I leave you with this. He said, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Listen, we can't force others to be humble, but we can be humble. We can't make people pray and seek his face, but we can. We can't force people to turn from their wicked ways, but we can and should clean up our own lives. When we do, God made a promise. He's going to hear from heaven and he will heal our land. So the answer to this world's problem and America's problems and every country who's watching, the problems that we face, the difficult topics, the things that we struggle trying to explain to our kids, the answer for all that is Jesus. So share Jesus, share his love, share the difference he's made in your life. And then you trust that when people encounter his grace, then they too will be changed. And that's what I've learned in trying to help kids and parents through difficult topics.